Hello, it's Scott Manley here, and today we are going to look at the Apollo 11 VR experience. I'm not going to actually do this in VR because the VR resolutions are lower. Instead, there is actually a monitor mode which I'm going to use so you can get awesome 1440p resolution video. But this is designed to be used with a headset. Now, the idea is essentially you get to ride along on Apollo 11. And they include a lot of comments from the pilots, from the crew. You get kind of the context in terms of having Kennedy's speech talking about the advancement of science and all that. And indeed, the experience starts with a Kennedy speech where you get to sit down in a virtual room and watch a speech play on a virtual screen while sitting in virtual, 1960s chairs or whatever.
No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we have come. But condense, if you will, the 50,000 years of man's recorded history in a time span of but a half a century. Stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except at the end of them, advanced man had learned to use the skins of animals to cover them. Then about 10 years ago, under this standard, man emerged from his caves to construct other kinds of shelter. Only 5 years ago, man learned to write and use a cart with wheels. Christianity...
So, right away, you should kind of get the idea that this is very much an on-rails experience. There are interactive sections, but it's really a stretch to describe this as a game. This is something where you sit down and you maybe take part in a couple of critical parts in the mission, but really a large part of it is about immersing yourself in the Apollo experience.
I think the momentous, most memorable thing that I can recall about that particular day was the opportunity while my two friends here were being put into the spacecraft to stand alone by myself out there and look at the rocket and the quietness and see the sun come up and the waves rolling in and the evidence of the millions of people watching, but nothing specific and just so quiet, and to realize that indeed such a contrast was going to take place, all the frantic activity preparing the rocket, but it was so quiet up there for me personally, and that in a very few moments we were going to be departing in a great roar and off for a momentous event.
So it's very much set up like a documentary. We do have, obviously, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, interviews that they conducted in the past are kind of woven into the experience. You can move the camera around, but you can't, you can adjust what way the camera is looking, but you can't necessarily adjust where the camera is, although it depends. Some sequences give you more control than others. I'm obviously not going to play out the whole thing. I've edited out huge chunks because, really it is like a documentary. Why would I post somebody else's documentary? This is more something which is linear, so if I'm cutting out huge chunks, that's why. So yeah, obviously we get to sit down for the launching. There are inaccuracies, for example, being able to see through all of the windows on the command module. To be fair, there is actually quite a bit of discussion as to which windows were covered by the boost protective cover. There's a cover over the command module that protected it from the exhaust blast of the launch escape system. They didn't want to break windows or anything if that had to fire, but certain missions had some of the windows uncovered, but I don't think all of the windows were uncovered. And that is a terrible aside because look at this cockpit. We've got all these awesome gauges and everything all laid out. None of them actually work, but that's fine. We got the audio, we can listen to this, we can look around, and in VR this is great. You can just take a look at all the instruments. Some of the instruments are working, some of the ones don't appear to work. But look, what's really important is a lot of the reports, the speech, the dialogue coming in over the net from mission control, which of course is why I think I'm just gonna shut up and let you guys listen to the countdown.
12, 11, 10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
And of course, during the launch, we have this awesome soundtrack to let you know how important the magnitude of what these individuals are about to accomplish.
Plus 30 seconds.
So some of the working instruments I see are the AGC, the velocity indicator, and the artificial horizons. I believe 1 Bravo is a reference to the astronauts switching over the launch escape system modes to 1B.
Altitude's 2 miles.
Oh, 11 Houston, you're good at 1 minute.
Downrange 1 mile, altitude 4 miles now. Velocity 2,195 feet per second.
11 Houston, thrust is go. All engines, you're looking good. Hi, Roger. You're loud and clear, Houston.
We're through the region of maximum dynamic pressure now.
11 Houston, your guidance is converged. You're looking good.
Set 8 miles downrange, 12 miles high. Velocity 4,000 feet per second.
Stand by for mode 1, Charlie. Mark, mode 1, Charlie. 1, Charlie.
I guess that's mode 1C.
Cliff Charles Works taking a staging status.
This is Houston, you are go for staging. Tower's gone. Roger, tower. Board cutoff.
Inboard engines out.
I'm in board cutoff.
And yeah, first stage cutout. And this is kind of where the launch sequence ends. This is your kind of moment. We don't go through the entire launch and injection into orbit. This is about as far as you get. But we do get to sit in the command module and watch the space pen float around.
Houston, be advised the visual is go today. This is Houston, roger out. Yeah, they finally gave me a window to look at.
And I'm guessing that is a Fisher space pen, which was not designed and developed by NASA. It was designed by a private company that then went and sold it to the Russians as well. Okay, so skipped another couple of sequences, a lot of space stuff as we begin the translunar injection. This is the docking sequence where we pull the command module, we use the command module to pull the lunar module out of the rest of the rocket. And this is an interactive experience. Very simple controls. Notice that spacebar is used for acceleration and deceleration, depending upon how close you are. So here, the first thing I need to do is rotate the spacecraft around to face at the spacecraft behind me. So I'm just using the cursor keys for that.
Rotate the spacecraft now.
Yeah, very simple. If you want the super accurate version of this, there is a mod for Orbiter 2010 that will let you do this in as much detail as you like. This is, well, 5 different keys that you need to use. So in VR, this is kind of cool because, of course, you can use left or right eye to look through the reticule, and it's modeled correctly here. And where is the command module? Oh, here we go. Here's the stage. There's the lunar module in there.
Okay, we got the Eagle in view.
So we got to line it up with that little target next to the docking port. And bingo. Just stop the rotation. And now use the spacebar to burn in towards it. Now obviously not burning too fast, we have to dock very gently here.
30 meters.
There, okay, so someone's calling off distance here. Now this maneuver was performed by Michael Collins because he was the command module pilot and therefore he was trained. The command module pilots pretty much went on a completely different training course to the guys that were to actually land on the moon. And apparently Michael Collins had enough free time that he designed the mission patch for Apollo 11. Anyway, the controls, and once you've rotated it into location and started thrusting towards it, they turn over, they switch over from being rotation controls to being translation controls. So very, very simple control scheme, but it's kind of fun to do this. If you really want to do it for real, yeah, Orbiter is there. 15 meters, that's what we're hearing. Also, I'm going to point out that those calls of distance aren't authentic. In fact, I'm pretty sure the astronauts would have been using feet instead of meters.
10 meters.
And obviously, these things weren't called out over the comms. There's transcripts for all of the Apollo 11 comms, which you can you can pull down and read, and none of this stuff is part of it. I mean, I'm guessing they had a voice actor record a bunch of stuff. It's produced by an Irish studio, actually, by the way. They're in Cork, which is a fantastic place to get a pint of Guinness. Also the last place the Titanic ever stopped. Speaking of which, I need to make sure this collision is not too fast. And right on the money here. Oh, just drifting. 1 meter, slow down. And get in there.
And capture.
Capture, yes! That sounds like a good docking. I wonder what my grade is. Well, apparently I docked too fast, but how was I supposed to know? They weren't giving me any visual feedback. Everything else is pretty good. Anyway, once again, skipping a few scenes. If you want to see them, you can buy the product. It's on Steam for $15. Yeah, we're going to try landing the lunar module. Now, landing, again, the controls are very, very simplified. You pretty much have cursor keys to control pitch, and you can transpose with it, and then you have the space bar. And just because of the way things are laid out and designed for VR, it's kind of complicated. You notice the Buzz Aldrin there is standing, and we have all these panels all over the place, and there is our target. That target wasn't actually on the lunar surface, just in case you're wondering. No, that is just added for your convenience, so you can try and land exactly where Neil had landed. Obviously, Neil had chose to move the spacecraft further over. So I found I've had to do this a couple of times to even get close to the target, but you have to reduce pitch early on to make sure you don't stop short. I'm getting the actual recorded comms. Oh, that'll be the 1201 alarm, or the 1202, I don't know, that'll be the alarm of the computer that's getting a little overloaded with all the systems being left on. I think I can probably talk over this because, let's face it, if you want to hear Neil Armstrong landing on the moon, there's a lot of other places to catch that. Okay, so I'm pretty much going flat here just to try to keep my forward momentum up. There's that master alarm. Oh my god, that is scary when that happens. So I'm using the grades in the window also as well. A lot of stuff was etched into the lunar module windows. Like some of the stuff, what you would do is you would punch some stuff into the computer and it would say, look at 20 degrees, and that would indicate where your landing spot was. There's programs that would work using these things in various ways. Okay, so I want to get over that crater. Last thing I want to do is land in that crater, but I think I am actually going a little fast now. It's so hard to tell. Now, obviously, if I was doing this in VR, it would be a lot easier to turn my head, but doing it with the mouse is a little more complicated. Okay, I think my horizontal speed is now 30-something feet per second. That's good. 20, 26...
60 seconds.
Oh, 60 seconds. We're starting to run low on fuel here. Want to make sure I put it down on the surface. Yeah, the other control I have is space, which just increases the thrust. So it's very much computer controlled still, and the trick is just to make sure you put it down without going too fast laterally. Now I'm down to... I think I'm actually going too slow now. I think I'm gonna pitch forward a little. Just try to get my speed higher. Okay, guess that's not gonna happen. There. Come on, help my speed pick up. Nope.
20 feet down, 2.5.
20 feet down, 2.5. It is 2.5 feet per second. And I'm picking up some dust here. Engine must be getting close to the surface, which means I'm getting close to the surface.
Contact light.
Contact light! Yes!
Okay, engine stop. ATA at a descent. Mode control both auto, descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. Port 13 is in.
Dramatic pause.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Griffin,
Who's the most awesome guys in the moon?
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Well, I thought that was pretty successful. I could have probably done better if I practiced more. But yeah, B I get for distance from landing to site. But my horizontal speed was a pro, and a A remaining fuel. That was better than what Neil Armstrong managed, I think. Okay, so final interactive segment is essentially running around on the lunar surface and setting up experiments and looking at things and getting talked to by narrators. Deploy all experiments and explore the landing area. When you're ready to leave, just approach the ladder and hit that leave surface icon. So yeah, ain't that something? Beautiful desolation.
Magnificent desolation.
Oh, magnificent desolation. Yes, thanks for correcting me on that. So yeah, walk up to the module, click on that,
Is now unveiling the flag that is.
and it begins the flag unveiling.
Okay, Houston, I'm going to change lenses on you.
There's all this stuff
Roger,
here.
Neil.
That flag looks a little small if you ask me. And actually it
Flag
should be...
Assembly, or LFA, was a kit containing a flag of the United States, designed to be planted by astronauts on the moon during the Apollo program. 7 such flag assemblies were sent to the moon, 6 of which were planted, the exception being the one carried on Apollo 13, which had to abort its landing due to a serious spacecraft failure.
Okay, so you get the idea, you get to listen to someone narrating important artifacts that are pertinent to the mission. That flag is completely wrong. It should be bigger and it should have a straight arm along the top. I think they just took some stock art. Also, it's missing Buzz Aldrin saluting the flag. Anyway, there's no real challenge here, it's just a case of wandering around, clicking buttons and then getting interesting narration from no doubt a fantastic Irish girl. And with the mission finally at an end, the EVA at an end, it's time to leave the moon. Of course, we get some more nice stock narration from the NASA archives. You know, one of the reasons these things can be made is that everything that NASA produces is essentially public domain. So you can take a lot of NASA audio and stick it in your game and you don't have to pay, you know, licensing or anything. It's not 100% true for everything, and you do have to be careful with some copyrights because there's some organizations that are attached to NASA that produce stuff for NASA. But you know, regardless, the comms from many of the spacecraft are definitely there. Yeah, so the Apollo 11 VR experience. If you've got a VR headset and you feel like flying along in Apollo 11 and maybe learning a bit, it's $15, which is kind of pricey for it, but it's really nicely produced. And yeah, you know, it's got the soundtrack. It's got a lot of you know, contextual stuff. It's a great thing to show people that might be skeptical of actually playing VR, but you might want to show them, say, a presentation where they don't need to do anything but look around. But if you're a gamer, don't expect there to be much gameplay in there. If you really want to fly Apollo 11 to the moon, the obvious game is Orbiter 2010 with the relevant mods. If you want to fly a lunar module around, then I'm going to put a shout out for Lunar Flight, which is also a lot of fun. But Apollo 11 VR experience, $15, Steam store, works on VR headsets or it works on a monitor if you're so inclined. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.
Eagle Houston, you're looking good to us.